Here's Gaither off the right side. Has room. Gaither might go right up the gut at the 20. Gaither 15 inside the 10. He will score. Touchdown.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peter Chevrolet.
Three receivers, Birch, Thomas, and Williams far side. Near side to Great. Fulbright to the right of Mordecai. Here comes the blitz. Mordecai throws a deep out pass. Caught! Kobe Birch! Touchdown!
Here's David Smoke.
Well, good afternoon. It's week 4. Texas high school football season. Man, this thing is flying by. And for some coaches that are having nice starts, you know that the first 3 weeks have been fun. And others who are looking for their first win or just trying to bounce back from a loss, it has probably been tough. But there's a lot of districts that start to open up play, and that's, of course, no matter what your record is in non-district play, this is how you make the playoffs, by winning district games or winning enough of them to be among the 4 teams that go on to play into the early to mid part of November and maybe up until around Christmas time. You know, I've been going back and looking at some of the state championship games that I covered or that I got a couple of personal stories that I don't have the scores in front of me. I started covering high school football in November of 1981. I remember, I mentioned this before, that I watched Groveton under Jim Wise, the head coach. Michael Horace was a great running back and a few others. When they lost to Boyd in the state championship game in a frigid night in December back in the day. But the one that I remember the most is doing the broadcast of what is now Lee High School, or Legacy High School, was Lee High School in Tyler, and then winning the state championship against Spring Westfield. We know how good Westfield has been of late. In a game down at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, it was a program that really was always overshadowed, not just by crosstown dynasty and tradition-rich John Tyler, now Tyler High, but really everybody, by Longview, by Marshall, by Lufkin. And then Mike Owens arrived in 1996 and turned that program into a state championship program. I remember broadcasting that game and what it was like to be a part of that moment. And even though I had done Lee, or now Legacy, for so many years, it was a thrill for me to be a part of the 94 John Tyler team that went on to win the state championship. I took over the week after that dramatic, crazy game against Plano East at Texas Stadium and watched them beat Austin Westlake in the Astrodome in Houston, and Alan Wilson and the JT family. They were so amazing and hospitable to me. I remember that. Obviously, watching Dangerfield in 85 beat Cuero, watching Phil Bennett's brother Jerry at Jefferson shut out Cuero at Kyle Field in 1986 with a team that had a bunch of Division I players on it. But I love watching young men have a chance to celebrate state championships, and why not, right? That's why you play the game, to grow up, to learn about adversity, and then eventually maybe be lucky enough to put that gold medallion around your neck. Looking back at later in the show, we'll look at the best games of week number 4, but looking back at a couple of the key games, just a note or two. Longview beat Legacy 46-20. Legacy's got one of the most difficult non-district schedules I've ever seen. And maybe schedules overall. That's Lee, by the way, used to be Lee, but so does Longview. Legacy is playing Allen this week. They took on Longview last week, and the Lobos kind of stumped their toe early, obviously playing a really good team, a great team from Denton Ryan, a state championship team. And then they were okay in a win against Marshall, that longtime rivalry. They hammered Legacy 46-20. I thought it was nice to see Trinity, obviously a tradition-rich team. They bounced back from a loss last week to beat Colleyville Heritage. Westfield beat North Shore. North Shore doesn't lose many games anymore, and Westfield got them 27-21. Austin LBJ and La Vega. Don Hyde and La Vega used to be Willie Williams, and now Don's been the head coach there and has won a state championship as assistant coach and also head coach. One of our first interviews we did. This is becoming a really good series between these two teams, Austin LBJ and also La Vega. Springtown got Connolly 30-29. They won the game in Waco a year ago, and they got them again, 30-29. Then Argyle just kind of, they are playing great. They play La Vega this week. We'll talk about that later on. They shut out Salina 23-0. Just another game to talk about among the elite games from last week. When we come back, every Friday, every Saturday, and even on Sunday, I asked coaches from greater East and Central Texas to send me stories about players who had amazing performances, player of the week type stats, quarterbacks who throw for 300 yards or 4, 5, or 7 touchdowns, running backs who run for crazy yards and score a bunch of touchdowns, defensive players that have stat lines that are crazy, even special teams, because special teams to me is always so important. And I got an email late Saturday from the coach at Cransville's Gap. It's a 6-man school. And I'm going to come back and tell you more about that email that I almost didn't read all of it because sometimes we're guilty of not paying attention. Thank God I did, because I can share you the story coming up of Trenton Roberson of Cransville's Gap and what he has overcome, what he has dealt with, and what he's done. That's next. Peters Chevrolet, our sponsor. Thanks to Randy Peters and Company. This is Smoaky.com presenting the Texas High School Football Show.
All roads lead to your largest selection of pre-owned in East Texas. 3306 West Grande in Tyler. It's time for a car buying experience you will enjoy at Peters Auto Sports. Cars from ultimate luxury to affordable economy. Trucks from work to play to all-out adventure. Come by 3306 West Grande in Tyler or visit us online at Peters Auto Sports and take advantage of our nationwide delivery. It's all here. Peters Auto Sports in Tyler.
For a limited time, refinance your vehicle and have 90 days with 0 payments. Only at Genco FCU. Refinancing lowers your rate and you pay less for your car. You can't pass on rates as low as 1.75% for 48 months. Apply online today.
Annual percentage rate subject to change without notice. Subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies. Go to GencoFCU.org. NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Welcome back. I mentioned that every week it has not failed for years and years and years since I owned the website Smoaky.com, but also because I love to see and hear about the great performances around the state of Texas, from 6-man or Class A all the way up to 6A, UIL, private schools, it doesn't matter. And I'm also fortunate enough to be a part of the Built Ford Tough committee that turns in nominations for Built Ford Tough. And then I'm a voter as well. And I love doing that. And it's crazy how good the performances are. It's all based on stats or maybe playing really good teams. And then Aaron Carroll, the head coach at Cransville's Gap, sent me an email. I was actually covering Baylor football at the time, late Saturday night. And I get this email from Coach Carroll at Cransville's Gap, young man named Trenton Roberson. Okay, 7 tackles, okay. Scored 3 touchdowns, okay. And then the rest of the story with him is Paul Harvey, the great Paul Harvey, the legendary late, great Paul Harvey used to say. This was a young man in Trenton Roberson, coming off 6 weeks of chemotherapy, coming back from testicular cancer after missing last year with a fractured collarbone. It stopped me in my tracks because there's a lot of great nominations every week. And then this one hit me, as you could imagine, right between the eyes, because sometimes, you don't feel good. Something's wrong. You think your life isn't fair. And then and learn the story about Trenton Roberson of Cransville's Gap. And I had the pleasure and the honor to speak to this young man and also his mother, Angela. Trenton Roberson, he plays for Cransville's Gap 6-man football team, Class 1A, 6-man football team, and what a week he had. I mean, I don't know, Trenton, out of everybody, quarterbacks who may have thrown for 5 or 6 touchdowns or running backs who ran for 300 yards or anything that could overcome what you did. And 7 tackles, I think 3 touchdowns, Cransville's Gap, you win the game. You haven't been able to play because of the story involving the fact you were diagnosed with testicular cancer. Can you try to explain to me, let's go back to Tuesday. I guess that's when the doctors may have told you that you have been cleared. What was that day like? What were you told?
Sir, I was once I heard the news that I was cleared and ready to go, I was so excited to play. I mean, I don't know if my mom mentioned it, but I didn't get to play last year either because of a small fractured collarbone I had. So I was out for about 15 weeks last year, like beginning of the season, couldn't play. I've always been big with football, been playing it since, in junior high and whatnot. And so I hadn't played for about a year or so. And hearing the doctor say that I was released and that I could come back and play, I mean, the excitement that went through my body, it felt so nice to hear those words come out of his mouth. And the doctor was very surprised that I actually still wanted to play after going through all my treatments and things like that, because it just puts you down. And I mean, I can't even describe it right now. I was just so ready ready to get back to school that Tuesday and just start on everything that I had missed out on. I was ready to start hitting again. I was ready to start talking to teammates again. I was ready to be a part of the team again. I was ready to be out on the field doing something and not just sitting on the sideline. Just all of these emotions hit me at once. It was one of the best days of my life, I would say.
Well, there's no question that chemo, radiation, what you went through is 6 weeks of chemo, can wear the body down because we know what chemo does. Was the adrenaline and the excitement of hearing the news enough to get you to play immediately? Because I would have thought it would still take you some time to kind of get back in it. I know you've been doing some cardio and some weights, which in itself is amazing. Was there any doubt you were going to play Friday when you were when you were told the news on Tuesday?
One of the biggest things I told a lot of people after the game Friday night was, in my head going into the game, I thought maybe, since my coach knew what I had went through, I thought maybe I would play, a play here, a play there, play once in a while, one or two plays here and there, be out for a little bit. I didn't think I would play the whole game, but I pretty much ended up playing the whole game. And I mean, as tiring as it was, I'm glad my coach gave me that opportunity to play the whole game after all that I've missed out on.
Well, and you guys had a great game. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, sir.
You've grown up. You're an 18-year-old young man. Who are you now as a young man compared to where you were? The fractured collarbone, obviously. But when you received the news back in December, or you felt the lump in December?
Yes, sir. One of my biggest things was I never thought it could happen to me. And I think that's kind of what most people think when they're going through life. And so when I fractured my collarbone, I guess that kind of woke me up a little bit. I was like, oh, this is a pretty serious thing that can happen, And then, just as it came down to it, I ended up with testicular cancer. And I was like, wow, I was like, this really is happening to me. It surely, it knocked me backwards. I mean, I did not expect it. Out of all the people in the world, I was like, man, this is happening to me. But just something in me was like, it's not a big deal. I'll just get through it and get back as fast as I can for my team. I think that was one of my biggest motivations with my team. I wanted to be there for them since I haven't been for the last year or so.
One of the things that we hope that this interview also brings is awareness of what happened. So let's go back to December. Were you having discomfort? Was there something, a stinging sensation? What made you, how did you know you had a lump?
The lump, it didn't bother me any, which I think is why most people don't get checked, is because sometimes it just doesn't affect them or whatever.
Right.
But I was pretty much just showering, and I just kind of felt it, and I was like, I don't know, that seems pretty odd. I was like, I don't think it's supposed to be like that. And that's when I didn't really think much of it. And about a month or so later, it kind of went away. And that's why it took me actually a little bit to get checked, is it went away. And I was confused, but I was like, it must have been whatever. And then it came back again a couple months later. And I didn't think much of it again, but then it stayed a lot longer than the first time. So that's when I actually went to my mom and was like, hey, this is kind of awkward, but I have this lump on my right testy, and it went away, came back, hasn't gone away again. I should probably get it checked. So went to my family doctor. Family doctor was looking at it. He actually did a little test, and sometimes the mass can be liquid and it could just be caused from something else. Well, mine ended up being a hard mass, and he determined this by doing a test, which he used one of their fancy like flashlight gadgets they use to like check your ears and stuff. So pretty much he just turned the lights off and was examining me. He tried to see if the light could go through the lump, and it did not, meaning it was a hard mass on my testy. So then that gave him pretty big concerns, and so then that's when he started to kind of look into where we need to go from there. And that's when I got referred to my urologist, and then my urologist, he kind of looked at it, and he was like, yeah, this isn't a very good thing. If it's kind of liquid or whatever, it could be something else, but this hard mass is pretty concerning. So then I had like a sonogram to kind of confirm in all this. And so then when the sonogram came back, my urologist came back, and he was like, yeah, he's like, this lump is pretty bad. It looks like this, yada, yada. We're pretty sure it's this. So then they couldn't really do much research after that until they actually extracted it. So then that's when I had my surgery. I believe my mom said in March to get it removed. Surgery in April to get it removed. And then from there, that's where they kind of looked at it, dissected it, whatever else they did with it, I'm not too sure. And so then that's when they pretty much came back to me and was like, yeah, it was, I believe my mom said it's embryonic testicular cancer. And so then that's pretty much what threw me into the whole chemo stage of my whole journey.
Yeah, what did you think when you heard it was that?
Well, I may be somewhat smart, but I'm not a huge science person, things like that. I don't know big words, so I actually had to talk to my mom, who's a science teacher, and be like, hey, what does this really mean, yada, yada. But, once he explained it to me, that pretty much took me back because, there is a chance that if it did spread, it could possibly kill me. So there was that big 50% chance that was hanging over my head when I made my decision to go into chemo.
You just said it could possibly kill you. Driving a car could do that. There's a lot of things that could happen that are just of happenstance. How does a young boy handle that?
I've always grown up trying to live my best life. And I'm not saying I accepted the fact that if I died, I would die. But it was one of those things where I was like, man, this did happen to me. I'm glad it's not happening to someone else. Like, I'm glad it's happening to me and not someone else I care about.
Chemo can wear you down. Did you ever, during the time you were going through chemo, did you ever doubt it was going to work? Was there ever a time you wanted to give up, not so much on living, but give up on playing football during that time?
I would say not really, because just the experience altogether, like the chemo may have made me feel really nauseous and mad most of the time, but the experience altogether, just the people that I was around really made the experience better. The nurses were great. Even people I would talk to just walking on the street who would ask about it, they were great. One of the biggest people I think that really helped me push through it, I think it was my 4th week in the chemo, and that was my next Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 hours infusion every day chemo, and I went to an Olive Garden, I think on Wednesday that week, and our waitress had actually done 2 years, not 2 years, she had done 2 rounds of chemo. She had done 6 months, and then a couple months later, and then had to do 6 months again because she found out she had, I don't fully remember what she said. It was some kind of female anatomy cancer, I believe. And so she did 6 months of chemo, and she talked to me about it, how she felt during it or whatever. And then she was cleared for a couple months, and then had to do another 6 months worth of chemo. And looking at her as my waitress, you could not even tell that she went through chemo. She told us about her life, her husband, her kids she has now. She has like a full set of hair, unlike me. But like, it was just so astonishing to me to see someone that went through such a rough time, but she was so bubbly and happy of what she did. And so that's pretty much what pushed me to be like, why should I be upset about it? It's only just a small hiccup or something in my life. Surely there's more after this.
That's what moms do, right? They're right there with you. You had to explain to her you had the lump, and then here we are, 8, 9 months, 10 months later, and you're cleared. What has your mom meant to you?
She has been my biggest supporter. Although I know when we first heard the news of it possibly being cancer and me having to go through with chemo, she did cheer up and cry a lot, which is understandable. I don't blame her. But she's been there every step of the way supporting me. I probably couldn't have gone through it without her. She was always there, could always talk to her. She knew what to do. It was nice having her.
What was it like to see her after the game?
It was very exciting to see that she was so proud that I had come such a long way from all the chemo trips, not being able to play last year, things like that. Seeing her excitement after me scoring so many touchdowns and getting a couple of tackles here and then being able to play in general, it just really filled my body with joy that she was so proud of me for being able to overcome all of this.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. It really, really is. You mentioned that the waitress had a full head of hair. You don't. So
yeah, I lost mine about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Hey, bald is beautiful, man, right?
I have 2 teachers that are missing hair, and they're always by my side, and they joke about it all the time. They always make it feel like it's not such a huge deal. And actually, that was one of my biggest things, is when I lost a testy, I wasn't actually, I wasn't upset about it. I knew people would joke about it and whatever, and, I'd laugh with them. That didn't bother me. Losing a testy I thought was great and whatever. But when I lost my hair, that's what made me so insecure, because it was such a noticeable thing about my character, is the way I would put it, because I've always had big, red, curly hair, always had to have a hat on to, contain it, or else it just was this mop on my head. And so losing my hair, that made me feel pretty insecure, but I've had teammates come up to me and compliment me about it. I've had some girls come up to me and compliment me about it. I've had plenty of people give me plenty of support about being shaved or bald or whatever.
It's awesome. What does this mean now? What have you learned about life?
One of the biggest things that I've learned is things really can happen to you that you don't think can happen to you. I never thought, being 10 or 12, I never thought, I would have testicular cancer at 18, or I would fracture my collarbone at 17. I think it's just sometimes people take too many things for granted. I really did not expect to just wake up one day and be like, oh, I have this lump I really need to check out, and then go through this whole, 6 or 7, 8 months journey of chemo and cancer and all that.
You're an amazing young man. Trenton Roberson with us. Caranfil's Gap has battled through testicular cancer. Last year, a fractured collarbone. Scored 3 touchdowns in the 51-0 win against Gustine, and also recorded 7 tackles on the other side. Trenton, I'll be thinking about you, man, all the way. Stay in touch. Congratulations on how you've handled everything, and also battling through what you've dealt with and doing it with class. We appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. I thank you for the support. I really do, man.
If you're not amazed by Trenton Roberson, I don't know how you can be. Then maybe you can't be blown away. And then you've heard his story, and what amazing personality and character this young man has. How about his mother, Angela? She had to share this story as well. She had to worry about her son as well. And listen to her emotions about where he's been and where he is now.
So, Angela, Trenton tells me about the timing, and I didn't even know about the previous injury, the fractured collarbone, which knocked him out of last year. So your son comes to you, a healthy teenager, and tells you he has a lump on his testicle. What was Mom's reaction?
Yeah. At first, I hoped it was nothing, just some little thing. But I am his science teacher. I'm his mom and his science teacher, 6-man school. And 20 years ago, when I started teaching, I actually saw an episode from some famous reporter who had testicular cancer, and it was a surprise to that man back in the day. And ever since then, like that man's interview way back when really stuck with me. So every year when I teach my science/health stuff, I always tell girls to look for certain things, in their bodies and be healthy. But I try to tell young men, check yourself, because testicular cancer is not an older man's disease. It's a younger man's thing. Like that testicular cancer is very common in young men. And so I always tell young men to check themselves, which they think is really hilarious and funny. But he came to me and told me about it. And at first I was like in denial. Like, no, this, like he said earlier, like, this can't be happening, And then 2 to 3 months later, he came again. And he was like, hey, Mom, something's not right. And so, we scheduled his appointment over spring break. And his general practitioner, said, hey, I've only seen 2 cases of this in 30 years, but I'm pretty sure this is bad. And, so we went from there. And like he said earlier, it's like, you're kind of in denial. He's so young and he's so healthy, but testicular cancer, really? It's been a crazy thing.
He and I have shared a lot of the information about that time from December of last year to spring break, and then he, of course, had the surgery to take out one of the testicles, and then chemo, and that's your son. You love, we love our children. And what have you learned about Trenton?
Oh my goodness, I have learned so much. He is, he's my hero. I've said that over and over. He has been so strong and just so amazing through it all, and so positive, and he makes inappropriate jokes about it, which we all laugh about. And he has so many inappropriate T-shirts about testicular cancer. But, I've cried and cried a lot, but he hasn't. And he is just so strong and so positive and like, hey, Mom, I got this. We're going to make it through this. He has just been amazing. And when he first found out he had testicular cancer, because we live in a tiny 6-man town,
Mm-hmm.
And I said, when we first found out it was really cancer, I said, okay, do we want to keep this quiet? Do you want to keep it private? Or can we talk about it? Is it okay if I talk about it to people? And he was like, no, let's talk about it. Let's spread the word. Let's get the message out there that young men need to check themselves. And I thought that was really brave of him. And he is, with his classmates, his teammates, on social media, even people he's never met on social media. He is totally out there. Like, this is what I went through. Check yourself. He's really helped spread the word. And that's what we're all about now. Because he's done with chemo. He's good. He's done with chemo. He doesn't have cancer anymore. Now we're all about spread the word and get it out there.
Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, he is cleared. And,
yes.
And, I would think he's worn out from chemo. He's tired. He's cleared. And what did you do when he told you he was going to play?
I actually was like, yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know my son, and like you said, last year with the fractured collarbone and being out, and this year, this stuff, he's a really strong, big dude and a good lineman and center. And I know how much he loves football. And it's his senior year. So, when the doctor, he and I were both kind of like all in anticipation during that visit Tuesday. We were like, oh, my gosh, is he going to release him or not? And when he did, we both were like, yes. And as we were walking out to the car, Trenton was so super excited. I was like, oh, my gosh, you're being extra, Trenton. He was so excited. I was so excited for him. Yeah, and when he made his first touchdown Friday night, I I was jumping up and down in the stands like a crazy woman. I was like, that's my son.
7 tackles, 3 touchdowns. And, I get nominations, Angela, all the time. Quarterbacks throw for 300 or 400 yards, 5 or 6 touchdowns, and running backs.
Yeah.
So when I got that one, I said, okay, 7 tackles. That's great. He scored 3 touchdowns. And then, thank God, I read everything. And I sat there and I kind of looked at it, and I kind of started doing something. And then I went back. I said, wait a minute, what? And that's when I emailed Coach Carroll and then text him, and I'm glad that he sent me that information. It's an incredible story. I can't wait for everyone to hear about it. I really can.
Yeah, and we love Coach Carroll, too. Adam Carroll is an amazing coach and such a great supporter of our kids. And he's my coworker because we teach together. Mm-hmm. But he's just really good for our kids. I love that he's coaching my kids. My daughter also plays football, and she's a sophomore. And her and Trenton have just been really enriched by his coaching. He's a really great guy.
So your daughter's,
I'm very thankful.
Your daughter's on the varsity football team?
Yes, she is, yes.
Well, that's a story in itself. That's awesome.
Perhaps.
What's her first name?
Her name is Trinity. Trinity.
Okay, that's awesome.
Trinity with a D, yeah.
All roads lead to your largest selection of pre-owned in East Texas. 3306 West Grande in Tyler. It's time for a car buying experience you will enjoy at Peters Auto Sports. Cars from ultimate luxury to affordable economy, trucks from work to play to all-out adventure. Come by 3306 West Grande in Tyler or visit us online at Peters Auto Sports and take advantage of our nationwide delivery. It's all here. Peters Auto Sports in Tyler.
For a limited time, refinance your vehicle and have 90 days with 0 payments. Only at Genco FCU. Refinancing lowers your rate and you pay less for your car. You can't pass on rates as low as 1.75% for 48 months. Apply online today.
Annual percentage rate subject to change without notice. Subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies. Go to GencoFCU.org. NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
A&M Consolidated has a great tradition, championship tradition, and their head coach, Lee Fedora, it's his alma mater. He's coaching there. What a win they had this past week against Judson High School. Yep, 5A beat a big boy 6A, and Lee Fedora joins us now on the Smoaky.com Texas High School Football Show. Man, I tell you what, I just impressed the fact you scheduled them. How did that come about?
Well, with this crazy stuff going on, we had Monterey Tigres set for a game at our place. And then when they shut down the border and everything, they had to cancel the game with us, which I understand. And so we were just looking for anybody to play. And I'd been searching for a long time. And then I saw Converse Judson all of a sudden needed a game. So I contacted them and they were good with playing us.
That A&M Consolidated coach has had huge wins in their lifetime. But that might be one without, again, state championships. It's not like you haven't played good people, but is this one of the better wins that school's ever had?
Well, I think it was a great win because, when you look at Converse Judson, they're a great team. And, I'll be honest with you, after I saw what they did to DeSoto, their first game, I knew it was going to be a tough battle. And, they had a tough game with their Lake Travis and all that. But we knew they were going to be a good football team because they've been outstanding for so many years. And I wanted a game like this in pre-district to get us ready for a tough district.
Well, and obviously you got it, and then you win that game. How do you make sure are you one of those that's pretty good about clearing it, whether it's a great win or a bad loss or whatever, and you go 1-0, you hear all the coaching cliches, you've got Willis this week?
Well, it's like we tell the kids all the time, that game's over with. Now we got to get focused for our next opponent. And I tell them all the time, and I've been saying this since I've been in my coaching career, it's one game at a time. You don't worry about what you did the week before or the week before that, it's just your next opponent. Now we got to get prepared for Willis.
Why do you coach? What is it? What is it? Obviously, the competition. There's a lot that goes on helping young men. What is like the mission statement for Lee Fedora in coaching?
Well, I tell you, the one thing I learned and throughout my coaching career, because I got this from Mac Brown, and we were at our regional meeting, and me and him were drinking coffee afterwards, and he said, Lee, what makes a great coach? And, I sat there and I thought about it, and he said, I know what your answer is going to be. It's going to be how many wins you got. That's what communities look at. And I said, yeah, Coach, that's kind of what I thought. And he said, well, let me tell you something. It's about changing one kid's life. You got to, you fix one kid that's hanging on that fence, to get him into the right direction for the real world. And from there on, I took his advice. It's about, making impacts on kids' lives and getting them ready. And that's what I enjoy about coaching, is being around these young men, getting them ready for the real world.
How and what does it mean to you when a former player, whether it's at Rogers or when you were at Navasota or even somebody else along your career's path, which has been nothing but winning a lot, what does it mean when they come back to you years later and tell you what you meant to them?
Well, I tell you, it means the world to me, because I love all these kids. And what's really neat is when I get a phone call and say, Coach, I want you to be at my wedding. I want you to come to this and come to that. And it's been outstanding, because, you made an impact on their lives. And that's what I want, because, getting to hear these young men. And what's neat is even the years that I won state championship, some of the first calls I got were from the guys that were at Rogers or Robinson. It's kids that you touch from the beginning of your career.
You've had a nice start at your alma mater, and obviously this team here looks like you could be really, really good. I know you want to go deeper and deeper. The win against Judson obviously does put you, on the radar if you weren't already there. You have a team that you thought could be pretty good, right? And where are they better than you might have thought?
Well, what I've been very pleased with this group is the chemistry on the team. All these guys come out and they work hard. And like I tell them, coaches don't build chemistry, it's players, and all the players are stepping up and doing that, pushing each other, not only on the field, but in the weight room, in the classroom, and all that. And like I told them, the years that we won our 2 state championships in Navasota, that's the type of kids we had. They weren't worried about if they're getting enough playing time or catching enough balls or doing this and that. They were just worrying about getting out there and being a part of their teammates and coming away with a W.
All right. The Navasota thing, you and I have talked about this before. You won 2 state championships, 109-30 record, but it didn't end very well. How much does that still possibly sour you, or does that matter anymore?
Well, it doesn't matter. It's just one of those things. I love being around that community and Rattler Nation, because it was a great community. We had great support, and, things happened the way it did. I hated having to leave those young men, but, then I had the opportunity to come back to my alma mater, and, it was neat to be able to get my 200th win while I've been the head coach here at Ana Consolidated. But like I tell all guys, I'm at 208 wins right now, but all those wins go back from when I was at Rogers, when I was at Robinson, when I was at Navasota and Ana Consolidated. The reason why I've been fortunate to have all those wins is I've had great coaching staffs with me, and I've had great kids around me.
Lee, what is it like to coach at your alma mater? And it seems like in the last decade, and I've been around high school football covering it for 40 years, not that it never was like coaches went back to their alma mater, but it does seem like there's more doing that. What is the good or not the so good, or maybe the more difficult about being at your alma mater?
Well, the thing is, it's neat being at your alma mater, but one thing I tell the guys, it's just another school I'm at, and I want to get those guys back in that mode that when I was able to be here my senior year, getting a chance to play in the state championship, because we were coached up hard. And like I told them, I'm not going to be a coach that's going to pat you on the back and give you ribbons for participation and all that. I'm going to be hard on you, because we're trying to get you ready for the real world. And when they buy into that mentality, that's when you start winning games like you do. And I've been very fortunate. I've had all kids buy into everything we've been, preaching to them and pushing them for.
You've missed the playoffs only 4 times, and I don't bring that up as a negative. I bring that up because you have rarely not played those extra games. How miserable were you those years you didn't play postseason football?
Well, I'll be honest with you, when I was playing for Coach Ross Rogers, who's a mentor to me, and when he hired me back, as his assistant coach, and I remember in our interview, he said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I kind of laughed at him. I said, I don't see that far along. In 3 years, I'm going to be a head coach. And he said, good luck with that. If you ever get a chance to be a head coach, there's 3 goals you want to get. Well, sure enough, 3 years later, I was a head coach. And the 3 goals he always told me is, number one, you want to go in and you want to win a state championship. And I was very fortunate enough to get 2 of those, and the second goal, he said, as a head coach, you'd always like to get 200 wins. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get to, now I'm at 208. And then the third goal, he said, if you get the state championships and you get 200 wins, there's a good chance you can be in the Texas Coaches Association Hall of Honor. And that's a goal of mine too. But, it's been really great coaching all these kids, and I've been enjoying being around these guys, and my coaches have been with me.
It's amazing about what you said about that Texas High School Coaches Association Hall of Honor. I just sent them an email. My former coach back, of course, I played back in the 70s, had one of the highest winning percentages of all time at 221 or so wins, played in a state championship game. And then, I don't know if you remember Dennis Alexander. He coached some great football teams at Dangerfield and other places, and they're not in the Hall of Honor. That is a select group, but you're right. If you get the 200 wins and you have state championships, shouldn't that kind of almost be automatic?
That's what Ross always told me as an assistant coach for him, and that's why I had those 3 goals on my board my entire life, and that's, I don't know, I hope I do get that opportunity, but, like I tell the guys, kind of like you talked about when you said, those 4 times you didn't make the playoffs, one of my goals was never have a losing season. Well, I had when I was at Rogers, I didn't have a losing season, but I didn't get in the playoffs one time there. And then when I went to Robinson, I wanted to go to a new place to just see how everything's going. That first year, it was very tough on us. We went 1-9, but I kept my head up. I was disappointed in having that. But then the next year, we went undefeated in our regular season, and we ended up getting beat in the first round. And that's always a goal that I never want to do, is get beat in the first round, because I tell the guys this: you ain't in the playoffs till you win a playoff game.
Right.
And,
yeah.
Then my first 2 years at Navasota, we didn't make the playoffs the first 2 years, but then the kids bought into everything, and then we made a roll and went 109 wins and 30 losses with 2 state championships. And I've been very fortunate here right now with, starting this year, going into my 5th year, we had 38 wins and only 9 losses. And now with the 3 wins, we're at 41 wins and 9 losses. But like I tell the guys, it's just one game at a time, and just be focused every day.
How much do you talk to Larry? And what's he doing now? Because I know he's no longer on the Baylor staff, but what's he doing these days?
Well, we stay in contact a lot. My brother, he bought a lot of land, and he's doing a lot of hunting and fishing. So
good for him.
Right now. But, he's still a mentor to me too, because we talk a lot, we communicate. In fact, this summer we got together. I went over special team stuff with him and different things, and it's always great to learn back and forth from each other.
Lee, congratulations on what you've done, what you've accomplished, but I know it's obvious you have many more goals to accomplish, including winning against Willis this week and moving on the rest of the year. Thanks for your time. Congratulations on the massive win against Judson, and good luck the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate being on here with you guys.
Lee Fedora, when I contacted him about being a part of the show, he said, heck yeah, let's be a part of it. And they earned it, not just because of his career, but the huge win against Judson this past week. Coming up next, we talk about the elite games in Week 4 of the Texas high school football season. And wrap it up, Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show.
All roads lead to your largest selection of pre-owned in East Texas. 3306 West Grande in Tyler. It's time for a car buying experience you will enjoy at Peters Auto Sports. Cars from ultimate luxury to affordable economy, trucks from work to play to all-out adventure. Come by 3306 West Grande in Tyler, or visit us online at Peters Auto Sports and take advantage of our nationwide delivery. It's all here. Peters Auto Sports in Tyler.
For a limited time, refinance your vehicle and have 90 days with 0 payments. Only at Genco FCU. Refinancing lowers your rate and you pay less for your car. You can't pass on rates as low as 1.75% for 48 months. Apply online today.
Annual percentage rate subject to change without notice. Subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies. Go to GencoFCU.org. NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
We hope you've enjoyed today's show, the Trenton Roberson story and his mother Angela and what he's overcome as a young man for six-man Cransville's Gap. And then Lee Fedora, two-time state champion head coach at Navasota. Back at his alma mater at A&M Consolidated, he's been an incredibly successful coach wherever he's been. And, of course, looking back at some of the better wins, memories to start the show. And now this is the schedule for this week. This is our good friend Jerry Forrest, pigskinprep.com, who has the rating service. If you haven't been on this website and subscribed to it, you should. He has every school imaginable in the state of Texas. And again, we go over this every week. The number on the right, the lower that number, the more important that game, based on the ratings or rankings of the teams that are playing. Opening game is Jim Nett and Cisco, a number 1 ranked team against a 6 ranked team. So there's the number 7. It's the highest rated game based on the lowest number of the teams combined. There's a 6-man game, a Class 1A game between Westbrook and Water Valley. Private school game between Nolan Catholic out of Fort Worth. They haven't won a game this year. No, actually, they're 1-2. But Midland Christian is they're just really good. So that game gets a little bit of highlight. How about this one, 6-5A? Rockwall has steamrolled through a very tough non-district schedule. And guess what? Yeah, here they are. They've beaten Lake Travis. They've beaten Cedar Hill. They keep on rolling. They play Highland Park. Midlothian Heritage in Melissa. That's a 4A game. Also, a game down in the 409, as they call it, West Orange Stark and Newton. How about Argyle and La Vega? Back in 2015, La Vega and Willie Williams won their first ever state championship with a win against Argyle down at NRG Stadium in Houston. They've been playing since that time. Argyle got them last year. And they're favored again as La Vega tries to find themselves week to week until they open up district play. Down at South Lake Carroll, favored against Arlington Martin. That's a good one to think. And then Austin LBJ, I mentioned them earlier. They beat La Vega last week. That's a game in that area down in the Austin area against Liberty Hill. Grandview and Glenrose. Glenrose has played Grandview, I think last year. I could be wrong with this, but they just decided to play because of some game that was canceled or whatever with COVID. They decided to pick that game up. Glenrose gave Grandview a handful, but we know Grandview and what they do, coming off their win against Salado and obviously the earlier win against Malakoff. At Atascocita a couple of weeks ago, headed Allen, their first ever loss at home. They get Geyer on the road. You got to give Atascocita a lot of credit. They're traveling up in the DFW area to play anybody. Aledo and Burleson. That's a road game for Aledo, and they're a heavy favorite in that game, as you could imagine. Dangerfield and Elysian Fields. Elysian Fields had to deal a little bit with COVID. Dangerfield lost a game against Tatum. They've had a good start to the year, but that will be an interesting game on the road at Elysian Fields. There's Childress and Shallowater in Class 3A. And then the last game, a 6-man game. Jayton, 3-0. Turkey Valley, 3-0. Jayton, a slight favorite, just over a touchdown favorite in that game. So those are the elite games, as Jerry Forrest sends me that list, thanks to Jerry Forrest and pigskinprep.com. You know, we want to thank again Randy Peters and Peters Chevrolet. What Randy Peters loves high school football. His dealership in Longview is amazing. His support of high school football throughout the state of Texas is amazing. And your support is amazing as well, and we appreciate you. Every week we come to you on Thursdays at 12. And then, of course, you can download it or upload it, whatever the terminology might be, as Armstrong kind of giggles in the background when you want to watch the show on YouTube every week. For Peter Chevrolet, for Armstrong Sims, for our guest today, think about if you have had a bad day or you're having a bad week, thinking about Trenton Roberson and what he's overcome as a young man in high school at Cransville's Gap. This is David Smoke. And this is Smoaky.com presenting the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports.